Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you had a good week. I had a great week. I was at vNext and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. There's a couple of other things to talk through first. Anyway, whatever it is you were doing last week, I hope it was good. If I saw you at vNext, yes, it was great, wasn't it? It was. Thanks for saying hi. It was good to catch up with everyone. Yeah, it was a really, really good time. All right, let's talk about the first thing and get that off the list, and then we can come back to talk about vNext for a little bit. And this wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a proper video in this month of this year if I didn't start it off by talking about Copilot. And Copilot's kind of taking a lot of the news right now, and this is definitely the case here. And we had the quarterly earnings last week as well, the Microsoft quarterly earnings, and as part of that, there was an interesting piece of information that Satya talked about around licensing for Microsoft 365 Copilot and some of the other Copilot solutions as well that I really wanted to talk through with you. So let's kind of look at that first. Oh, that's fun. Okay, let's not do that. Well, I mean, we are going to have to do that. So no screen, don't worry. It's not you. Do not adjust your set. It's not you, it is me. I've done this before. This has happened before, isn't it? I could probably do a whole video on why that happens, but let's not worry about it for now. Anyway, so this is the blog post I wanted to show you. Microsoft 365 Copilot will be separately licensed, Microsoft execs confirm. Now, the source for this came from that earnings call, and specifically a question that got asked to both Satya and Amy Hood. And I've put the full transcript from the earnings call in the blog post, so you can go and read it yourself. But the kind of overview there is that both Satya and Amy are of the opinion that something like Copilot is a big enough value differentiator that it will be licensed separately. And so I think you can expect to pay for it separately from current licenses. I don't see it being bundled into existing license SKUs. There is a good example of this in the real world right now, which is GitHub Copilot, which is something that is out today, versus a lot of the Copilot solutions that have been announced that are coming, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But one that is definitely out and available right now is GitHub Copilot. That currently is available, but it's an additional cost. So it's an additional $10 per month, or $100 per year, or it's $19 per month for businesses. And so both Satya and Amy said we can expect something like this to the other Copilot solutions when they come. I don't think this is a huge surprise. For lots of people, Copilot is resource intensive on the back end, and also does provide new and interesting functionality, which, whether you believe the marketing or not, I think objectively will change how people work. Where it's gonna take some time for us to figure out how kind of life-changing this is going to be versus how kind of incrementally changing it's going to be. I don't think we're going to know particularly until we look back on it. But either way, it's something that Microsoft are looking to license separately. So, yeah. Again, no dates, no costs, no actual amounts of anything yet. So we're just going to have to wait and see. You could maybe look at the GitHub one and try and kind of figure out if that's a sensible price point for the other Copilots, but I'm not sure that's sensible. I'm not sure that necessarily translates, so I think we are just going to have to wait and see. Okay, so I said we were going to talk about vNext, and we are. Really, really good conference last week. I did a good session. Well, I did a session. I don't know if it was good or not. It was well received. It was well attended. There were some great questions, all about bot design, which is even more important now in our kind of GPT flavored world for doing chatbots and chat experiences and stuff. And one of the things I did as part of vNext was a podcast, or a video podcast, which I did as part of G12's series on Everything Teams Phone Live. That's already streamed and is available on YouTube, so I'll put the link in the show notes because you can go and watch it right now. We had a really good conversation. Rick and Brandon are great co-hosts because they're very good at opening up the conversation. And it was really, really good to talk through. We talked through Azure Communication Services. We talked through B2C. We talk through video first. We talk through all sorts of interesting things. How you might do it, the pros and the cons, where this particular technology could be useful. It was lots of fun to go through, and it was really good. And it was a great setup as well. They had going at vNext, a really nice podcast studio, very very easy to work with. Just show up and start recording, and they handled all the back end tech. They handled the streaming. They handled the video cuts and the production, the real time production. So that was really really cool. And just let us get on and talk. Enabled us really to just concentrate on the content, which was really really nice. All right, so we're going to see more vNext stuff coming out, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Certainly, I'm going to do something with my session that I did there. I did try and record it, so we'll see how that comes out. And also, I've done a bunch of other video stuff, which I'm going to try and put together in a whole big video, like I do for the other conferences, for vNext as well, as a kind of memento, I suppose, a capsule. But also, if you weren't there, it serves as a good way of you figuring out what you missed, which is not so much just so you know what you missed, but also you can use it to understand if it's something you want to try and attend next year, and you can put plans in place to make that happen for next year. Okay, let's talk about something else. Microsoft, also Cloud.Microsoft, is a new domain that you are going to see more and more of in the coming months and years, and that's because Microsoft own the top level TLD, the top level domain .Microsoft. Microsoft own that. And so we're going to start seeing them use it in different places. And Cloud.Microsoft is their new top-level landing place for all sorts of cloud services. And so we're going to start to see a kind of, what's it called? A convergence. The way, lots and lots of different services, cloud services. So Microsoft Teams, we're going to see Loop, the new things. We're going to see things like SharePoint. We're going to see Outlook. We're going to see Microsoft status updates. We're going to see OneDrive. We're going to see Team. I said Teams already. Viva. They're all going to fall under this Cloud.Microsoft domain. So that's going to mean some renaming of things. There's a whole blog post. Doesn't give a full listing. It just gives some examples. This is a list of existing domains that you can use today to access Microsoft services. They're things you probably recognize: teams.microsoft.com, outlook.office.com. Now, importantly, these are, if you're a big enterprise, these might be things that you have allow listed. So there's a new way of, you need to basically pay attention to this new top level domain. Now, what you might be able to do is just whitelist Cloud.Microsoft. Now, this is one of those newer top-level domains, so it might cause some issues with older hardware. We're just going to have to wait and see. But the idea is there's one big unified domain that will represent all Microsoft services. So I do think, there's a few, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference to lots of people. I can see it being useful for IT admins because you've got one very high level domain that you can ensure you can kind of catch all Microsoft services, both current and future, because Microsoft do like to bring new things into the world with different names. So that's good. So I don't think there's going to be. I think it's going to be a very slow process to move things over. I don't think this isn't going to suddenly cut over. What they're saying is that to start with, only brand new services are going to start using this domain. And then there's going to be some slow process probably, where they kind of not cut over, but probably have things, going in both places and redirect and all the rest of it. So already the Cloud.Microsoft domain, so star.cloud.microsoft, it's already been added to the official list of Office 365 URLs. So if you have anything that pulls from that and updates hardware, that's already happening, so you're done. They do say they're going to provide lots of notice and notifications for any breaking changes, for more established domains. This does feel like it's going to be a long-term process, to get things moving over, because we're very familiar with things like teams.microsoft.com, sharepoint.microsoft.com. So, all right. It's interesting. So, just want to be aware of, I think, just so because you'll start to see it in, I can imagine Microsoft will start using in publicity as well. and then they'll be redirecting to different places. So even though teams.microsoft.com will continue to run for a long time, I would not be surprised to see Microsoft start to use teams.cloud.microsoft in marketing and in promotional kind of go to teams.cloud.microsoft. You can kind of imagine that. So yeah, just so you know, that's what it means. That's what's happening, and that's the thinking behind it. All right, let's come back to talk about Copilot again, and a blog post announcing Copilot somewhere else this time inside Microsoft Viva. Now, this is only interesting. So, I mean, this is interesting for a few things, but the only reason I put it in this update is because there's some good screenshots in here, and the screenshots are a good way for us to judge a few things, actually. Firstly, progress, because we've had lots of announcements of Copilot coming to different places, but without really any timelines or anything like this. This blog post has both screenshots and timelines, and the screenshots aren't, and the timelines are not that far away, which makes it kind of interesting. So I thought it'd be interesting. So you can go and read this blog post. It's all about what you might imagine. It's about Viva, it's about Copilot, and it's about bringing the two together. So they've given some examples. So for instance, Microsoft Viva goals, there's a screenshot here which shows Copilot being used inside Viva goals. And there's a few things I want to point out. The first is you've got this Copilot sort of bar that's come in on the right hand side, and this, for me, I think maybe this is how we might see Copilot being used in lots of these applications. And this is kind of interesting because this looks like it might be an established extensibility model. It looks kind of like the Office 365 add-ins, and so it might be that this is how we see Copilot coming to lots of different types of these applications, where it's not really deeply embedded into the product. It's more something that sits alongside the product and helps you run the product. And here, there's in this example, I don't know if you can see the text, but it said, I generated these OKRs from your document, and then the name of a document. So it's created some OKRs that you can then click a button and push them into your OKR list for what's happening here in Viva Goals. And you've also got some other buttons for make these OKRs more ambitious, and so on and so forth. Leaving aside for a moment whether or not it's a good idea to get a AI tool to generate your OKRs, I think this is interesting because it shows some concrete use cases for using Copilot inside Viva products. It shows how they might come. You can see with the screenshot how they might come. There's another example here. Again, you can see Copilot alongside the existing text, so kind of interesting. And in here, I think this is more around Copilot here is looking at the what's been written here. This is for Viva Engage, which is about creating posts and messages to send out to your workforce. And here, in Copilot is suggesting some things that the readers of this might ask, so it can help kind of tone the messaging. Let's come down a little bit to the announcement around Viva Glint. Again, separately announced, but worth just on the side. Viva Glint is all about helping organisations measure and improve employee engagement. Makes sense. It makes sense for it to be in the Viva suite. And they're talking about it coming in July this year. So that, again, quite aggressive. And when it comes, it's going to have Copilot in as well. No screenshots of that. And I don't think this video, I won't play a video now. You can go play the video. I don't think there's anything particularly Copilot in there, but I might be wrong. But what's interesting is it says here that Copilot in Microsoft Viva will begin rolling out to customers later in 2023. So we don't know when later in 2023 is. I will say towards the end of the year, in November time, you do have Microsoft Ignite. That is a big IT Pro conference. It's often heavy with Microsoft 365 announcements. That kind of would make sense, perhaps. Although if they're ready before then, I would absolutely expect them to roll it out before. But if not, I would say look to those big flagship conferences like Microsoft Build, Microsoft Ignite. We've got Build coming up, by the way, at the end of the month. That's going to be interesting for announcements. Keeping an eye on that one. But I don't think this is ready for. I don't think it's ready for Build, but I think later in 2023 could well be Microsoft Ignite. we are just going to have to wait and see. So I thought it was worth bringing to your attention because it's not a million miles away. You know, as they say, it's going to happen this year. So yeah, interesting. And then finally, this is going to be a long one, isn't it? Finally, I want to talk about this blog post on the Microsoft Teams blog. It's entitled "What's New for Security in the New Microsoft Teams." And if you're a developer, you know this is more of an IT pro subject. However, I thought it was interesting more for developers, less so in the developer extensibility part of Teams. You know, this is less about new features or changes to features for developers working in Teams. Just generally, those with a developer slant will find some of the information that's in this blog post kind of interesting because it talks a little bit about the new version of the Microsoft Teams desktop app, which has been announced, and some of those architectural changes and some of the thinking behind them. So, for instance, talking about the move from Electron to Edge WebView 2, what that means, some of the benefits, and if you're a developer who's built on these things, you will recognize these. There's some interesting claims here. So they talk about how the new Teams executable is slimmer. It looks like it's around 10 times, a tenth of the size. Does that equate into it being better for users? I'm not quite sure. But I mean, I guess it's better for security because you've got less code, less packaging, so less attack surface. And then they're also using trusted types on the web for better security stuff. So it's kind of interesting. There's some information in here that I hadn't seen elsewhere. So might be worth a read just to see if you can pick up kind of tidbits of information, such as, so like, the other thing is they're using MSIX packages, they're using app installers, both native Windows things, rather than the kind of Electron deployer that is being used at the moment. So I thought it was interesting. Again, no huge new pieces of information, just an interesting kind of reading of the new Teams client. All right, I think that's everything for this week. Like I say, it's been a busy week, and I think this coming week, so in the UK, today, the Monday, is a holiday day, no work. So that's the reason this video is slightly late, so sorry about that. That normally means the rest of the week is pretty busy as everybody kind of tries to get 5 days work into 4 days. We've also got the same thing next week because of the coronation. So it is going to be a busy couple of weeks, I think. And then before we know it, we're going to be into Microsoft Build. And then towards the end of the month, we've got more conferences coming up as well. I will talk about those next week probably because I can't remember the exact dates and everything, but I know they're coming up soon. There's some in the UK, there's some in Europe. So yeah, lots of fun stuff to look forward to. All right, I think that's everything from me. Whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great one, and I will speak to you again next time.